Hello, my name is Crazy Owl, and today we're going to be starting a Let's Build series. And a Let's Build series is kind of like a Let's Play, but in creative, and you're building things. So, my plan for this series is to create a little town, sort of rustic, sort of medieval, sort of suburban, kind of a combination of the three styles. And I want to make extra focus on the terraforming and surroundings because it does really matter. But other than that, make sure you like and subscribe if you like the video, but let's go. Now, before we start the city, I actually want to find a different biome, because though that is a nice place, I don't know if it'll be big enough depending on how long we make this series be, and also, I'm just not a huge fan of the looks of it. Though I can do a decent amount of terraforming, it might not be the funnest thing to do, because I would need to do a lot of terraforming. So I'll come back in a second when I find a good place to build. Alright, so I found this plains biome, and it's not humongous, nor is it great terrain, but it's better terrain than the last one we were in, and there's another one attached to it, which kind of makes it bigger, and if I needed to, I could also expand into the forest. I'm not sure where I'm going to build my first house, but I think I want it to be in this sort of beachfront area, and also I will clear up this a little bit, so I'm going to do a quick time lapse of clearing up the land. Now that we have a little bit of a more organized and better looking space, we can start to plan out the build. And I just want to say that this is not done. This is far from done, but this is all we're going to do for now because I want to finish the build before I do any crazy terraforming. This is just to make it look like not choppy. I don't want to do a huge build today, but I do want something large enough to have like maybe a couple bedrooms if it were a real house. So I'm just gonna clear out the last few things which I forgot to clear out in the time lapse. Just some grass, and then now we can get to planning. The first step is probably like the main shape, and because as I said I want it to be relatively large, I am going to make the main shape slightly large. I think I want it to be about this large, which is pretty big. You want to make sure it's an odd number, at least if you want to do the type of roof I plan on doing, and then kind of just go with the flow, I guess, for your shape. Like if the build you have in mind is a square with sticky outy bits, then make it a square. If it's a rectangle, then make it that. If it's a circle, make it that. If you're not really sure what shape to make it, I suggest a rectangle or a square, but of course there are other parts we're going to pop out of it and change it and stuff. So also for the main shape, I'm going to pop out a few blocks on the back just because I think it will add some interest to the build. So I'm going to add this, I think, to the back. And that is going to be the main part, but not the only part. I want a little bit of a outcropping where the door is going to be, right here. And then maybe some sort of like shed in the back, I don't know, something right here. Kind of popping out of this. And then also, I think, a deck, but I'm not going to have that until on the second floor, and I'm not quite sure where I'm going to put that yet. Maybe over here would definitely work. I'll figure it out when I do it, but now for the height. I'm going to make the height 4 blocks for the floor, for the first floor. There's not really going to be a foundation because of the style I'm building in. So I'm kind of just gonna use the whole block all the way through, though I might make sort of a gradient. So maybe if there's a couple blocks I'm randomizing, I'll try to use one more on the bottom and one more on the top. And I'm going to make the add-ons only 3 blocks tall, just to make it more interesting. And these are not going to have a second floor. Instead, these are going to have just a roof right here on the first floor, and that should be easy enough to do, though it might be a little bit complicated. I am now realizing that this is not an odd number, so let me fix that quick. Alright, so this is pretty much the first floor planned out, and I know that this part, some of it at least, will continue up. I think I'm going to continue the entire part up, and I am going to do some framing here, so I'm going to make this like a total frame around it, and then we can build it up even more for the second floor. And I also think that I'm not going to include the back half on the second floor, and I might cut off other parts of it. It'd look kind of interesting to have... That's not even. Let me fix that. Okay, now we can do this properly. I think it'd be cool to have part of it not actually have a second floor. So I think I'm going to leave the sides kind of as they are, and only bring up this square part that is through all 3 sections. And then there can just be roofs here, and this will kind of add depth to this side. But I also want to explain palette. I think I want to have a similar palette for the entire city, but I'm not going to pick the whole thing now because I'm just not sure whether I'll like it or not like it and change my mind. But I think for this build, I want to go with light, sort of almost beachy colors. So I think I'm going to go with oak logs and birch wood and white windows, which will look pretty good, and then I'm going to put sandstone in the bottom as not a foundation, but as the bottom floor. And I'm kind of going to randomize the different types of sandstone, but I'm mostly going to use smooth sandstone. So I'm going to fill in the frame with stripped oak wood, except for the bottom, which will just be empty. And also in the outcroppings, which are on the first floor, I'm going to use the birch wood. So I'm going to fill all that in on camera, and then we'll come back for the roof. Now we have a pretty good house, at least a pretty good house shape that we can use for our, well, first house in the city, and I do really like the shape. I think good decisions were made, and I'm pretty happy with it. There are a few things you might have noticed from the time-lapse. First of all, I popped out the frame 1 block just because there were some parts that wouldn't have been big enough otherwise. And I want to tell you that sometimes builds have the frame popped out a block to add more depth, while others have it the same level as the wall. I don't know if there's a specific reason that people like it the second way, but I think it looks better with some styles. Like one of the YouTubers you'll know I really like if you've watched some of my other videos is B-Dubs or B000100, and he sets his frame blocks on the same layer that the wall blocks are on, and his builds still look great. But a lot of times if you have a build that's looking pretty flat, then it would look nice to have the frame popped out a block. And this build, I did pop it out a block because it's relatively large. You'll also notice that I just plopped down these blocks just as my palette. And then also that, I don't know if you noticed this, but I did want to mention I tried to put the sandstone and chiseled sandstone and cut sandstone, the ones that weren't smooth sandstone, towards the bottom just to make it look a little bit more almost like they're sort of a foundation, but at the same time not really. I'm not 100% sure yet what I want my roof to be made of. I'll try out a couple of things, but I do know I want it to be framed with oak. So I'm going to start that, and maybe in the time lapse I'll also test out some blocks that I could use to fill up the roof. Now we're done with the biggest parts, the walls, the roof, the plan, and basically all we have is detailing. And I just kind of wanted to go over what I did with you guys. So I was originally going to make a stair roof, but I decided that the incline was too steep because of how wide the house was, so I decided to use slabs. And then for the roof, I used stripped jungle wood and brown mushroom block, which might be a little bit hard to get in survival, but it's found in this inventory, in the nature inventory, in mushrooms if you're in Bedrock. I'm not sure exactly what it would be in Java, probably in decorative blocks or building blocks or something like that, but it's actually not a bad wall block or roof blocker for whatever you want to use it for. And for part of our last step, I think I'm going to use white glass just to kind of keep with the light colors of the build, and then I'm going to use an oak door and maybe even add some shutters around it because I think it would look really nice with this. But I actually don't think I'm going to put any windows on here. What I do want to do though is make almost a little overhang over this, not too big, just something like this, not that, with a couple fences or something. I just think it'll make it a little bit more interesting. Or, I don't know, something like that. I might change it off camera if I'm not a huge fan of it because it's not my favorite. It looks a little weird, but now for this wall, I do want to do a window, and I am going to use shutters. So I think this is a good place for it. I really like how that looks, so I'm kind of going to continue that onto this wall. I'm actually going to put the shutters in before I put the actual window in, just to make sure that it's all in the right spot. So here's what this one's going to look like. And I'm going to change that to be one big window. That's better. So I'm kind of going to just continue this around the house, and then I'll do a final showing at the end. Alright, this is the final house other than the interior and exterior decoration, but we're done with the detailing, we're done with the roof, we're done with the walls, we've done everything that needs to be done to make it a house. I honestly really like it, and the funny thing is I didn't really expect it to go very well. I have built some houses trying to be this style, and they've turned out pretty bad, so I'm very glad that this one turned out a way I like. There are a few things I'll have to do off camera, like fill in this part on the roof, like decorate the inside and the outside. Also here and up here, there's spots where I have to decorate the inside of the roof. But I just really like it, and I also put torches on the inside of every window just to make it look glowy. Oh, by the way, I put on some shaders just because it was looking kind of dull, and I thought it would look really pretty with shaders, and I think I was right. That is it for today, so I really hope you enjoyed, and see you in the next one.